Imagine standing in a queue for years just to buy a telephone, not metaphorically, but literally. In India, before the 1990s, buying a phone connection could take years. Importing products from abroad was heavily restricted. Starting a business required endless permissions, and foreign companies, most couldn't even enter India freely. This was not because India lacked talent, it was because India was not open. A system built on control, protection, and government dominance. But then, 1991 happened. India faced one of its biggest economic crises in history. Foreign exchange reserves were so low that India barely had anything to pay for a few weeks of imports. And that crisis in 1991 changed everything. The economy opened up, restrictions reduced, foreign investment entered, private businesses expanded. This transformation came to be known as liberalization. And today's India, startups, malls, global companies, IT, rise in exports, all date back to 1991's liberalization. But the fascinating part is that the story isn't just about how India opened up its economy. It's much more than that. Because liberalization changed everything. How India planned, how industry worked, how agriculture evolved, and how India connected with the world. So in this episode, we are leapfrogging into what liberalization really meant, India's economic strategy before 1991, the pre-liberalization economy, the post-liberalization economy in India. This is the story of India's economic transformation. To understand liberalization, we first need to understand one word: control. Before 1991, the economy was heavily controlled by the government of India. The government decided what industries could produce, how much they could produce, what could be imported, who could start businesses, and where investments could happen. Businesses needed licenses for almost everything. This came to be known as the license Raj. Liberalization simply meant reducing unnecessary government control, allowing the economy to function more freely. But liberalization wasn't alone. It came as a part of three major reforms: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Liberalization reduced the government's controls and rights. Privatization gave private companies a larger role in India's economy. Globalization connected India with the global economy. Together, these reforms changed India's economy completely. But why was India so controlled before 1991? For this, we need to date back in time. We need to go back to independence.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake.
When India became independent in 1947, the country faced massive challenges: widespread poverty, slow infrastructure development, colonial economic damages, illiteracy, food shortages, and what not. India needed rapid development, and the leaders thought that the government had to play the central role. So India adopted economic planning. The government came up with 5 big plans for agriculture, employment, industry, infrastructure, and for rapid economic growth. The government came up with a simple plan. Instead of leaving development to the markets, the government would guide the economy strategically. This approach was partly inspired by the Soviet model. The state became deeply involved in production and investment. Heavy industries like steel, power, railways, mining were largely controlled by the public sector. The reason was simple. Private industries at the time were too weak to build large infrastructure on their own. So, the government stepped in. This is what we called a mixed economy. This means that the government and the private sector both had a role to play, but the government was the dominating factor. And for some time, this helped India build industries, dams, scientific infrastructure, institutions, and self-reliance. But over time, problems started appearing.
Like the Soviet Union, India had used central planning to industrialize its peasant economy and conquer poverty. Now India, like government-dominated economies all over the world, was running into difficulty.
the government of India went into business in a big way, and they decided to control whatever was there in the private sector also as firmly and fiercely as they could.
The British Raj was gone. Now people were subjected to the permit Raj because everything needed a government permit. India became a byword for red tape and bureaucracy. Businessmen found it almost impossible to get things done.
It used to take us about 12 to 24 months and about 50 visits to Delhi to get a license to import a computer worth $1,500.
Since it was impossible to work with the system, people learned to work around it.
Every license, every permit was procured by corrupt means.
A bribe.
Well, bribe is the simpler word, I suppose.
Self-sufficiency was India's ideal. To protect its own manufacturing industry, India shut out foreign imports.
Because of this protected market, the Indian people were being given shoddy goods and services at very high prices. Enterprise was stifled and growth was crippled.
The economic environment was simply not conducive to efficiency or profitability. We were in a shortage economy. My father waited 15 years to buy a car.
Take India's beloved Ambassador car. It is made by Hindustan Motors, which started manufacturing in the same year as Japan's Toyota. 50 years later, Toyota makes 5 million cars a year. Hindustan sells 18,000 Ambassadors, and still to the same design.
If you have a controlled economy cut off from the rest of the world by infinite protection, nobody has any incentive to innovate, nobody has any incentive to increase productivity, to bring new ideas.
Overprotected, over-administered, overplanned. The permit Raj was quite literally a brake on the Indian economy.
The pre-1991 economy had several features. Some helped India's economy grow, while some led to the downfall of India's economy eventually. Industries required licenses and control for expansion and production. Even decisions businesses normally make independently required government control or government authentication. This slowed down innovation and efficacy. The government controlled major industries like telecommunication, aviation, energy, banking, and steel industries. The public sector became exceedingly large. Some enterprises succeeded, some became inefficient slowly, loss-making, and overprotected. India tried to reduce dependency on foreign goods, so imports was heavily curbed. The idea was to produce domestically instead of importing. This protected India from foreign competition, but it also reduced competitiveness. Hardly any companies had incentive to improve quality. Imported products were expensive due to heavy taxation. Companies had limited access to Indian markets. India remained a relatively isolated economy. Foreign ownership rules were strict. India feared economic dependence on foreign countries, so foreign investment remained low. For decades, India's economic growth rate remained very modest. Economists called it the Hindu rate of economy growth. Growth existed, but it was relatively much lesser than other industrial countries. Rules, approvals, and administrative delays made businesses work inefficient, and hence business expansion was also affected. Entrepreneurship became harder day by day. Eventually, these structural weaknesses led to a major crisis. 1991, inflation increased, fiscal deficits increased, foreign exchange reserves collapsed. India reached a point where economic reforms were inevitable. And that's when the post-liberalization phase began. After 1991, India introduced many economic reforms, and the economy changed dramatically. Many industries no longer needed licenses. Businesses increased, entrepreneurship empowered, private companies expanded rapidly, competition increased. This led to innovation in various fields, which is very important. Foreign companies now had a chance to play a role in Indian economy. Global firms entered India. Investment increased in telecom, automobiles, technology, retail, and manufacturing. India became more connected to the global market. Exports increased, imports increased. Indian companies also entered global markets. One of the biggest transformation happened in services, especially IT, software, finance, and telecommunication. Cities like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and Pune became global tech outsourcing hubs. Companies now had to compete globally. This improved product quality, productivity, and innovation. Consumers also got more choices. India's GDP growth increased significantly after liberalization. The economy expanded faster than other countries. Millions entered the middle class from the poor class. Liberalization accelerated technology adaptations. Internet, digital services expanded rapidly. Reforms introduced several challenges. Growth became uneven. Some regions advanced faster than the others. Income inequality increased, and certain sectors, including agriculture, started struggling.